Hello, beautiful, and welcome back to our next lesson in the Effectology Method program. Right, so we are on Module 6, which is all about learning to relax and getting really effective, coming at it from that place of aligned effectiveness and then marrying that alignment with the practical strategies that help you get the most important jobs done. So in the previous lesson, we covered the core effectiveness principles that are really important for you to keep in mind. And we started looking at protecting the golden goose. And today we're going to start chunking it down to the next level, which is actually creating some structures that will create freedom for you, because when you free your time, you free yourself. So just a quick recap. The previous lesson pretty much addressed the question, how do I get everything done without wearing myself out in the process? How do I protect and recharge my energy and still do everything that I need to do to make my business grow, evolve, and be the best possible CEO to it that I possibly can be, and still take great care of myself and feel fabulous and have lots of energy left at the end of the day and have that feeling of satisfaction and still plenty of energy to just be you, rather than just being a slave to your business who gets up in the morning, works all day, tries to get the other things around the house done, and then falls into bed at the end of the night only to repeat it over and over again. So we chunked it down to just these 4 things, remembering that time is an illusion. It's a construct, and it's actually an internal construct of yours. So you get to approach it how it serves you best, and you get to make some changes that will allow you to expand time rather than have time contract on you and feel like suddenly your day's gone. Remembering that Parkinson's law applies very much to the concept of time, where whatever amount of time is available will get used up unless you've allocated and protected it to be used for something else. And then remembering that alignment always comes first, because when you approach any task from that place of alignment, what it means is that you then tap into that magic power, that leverage of the universe, and all the right things happen for you at the right moments. You happen to just see the right post by the right person at the right time. You happen to meet the right person at the right time. You have excellent timing, and that comes from alignment. So excellent timing is about all the pieces of the puzzle coming together in this magical sequence where it's, wow, if this had happened last week or next week, it wouldn't be anywhere near as meaningful. And this is just absolutely perfect. Perfect conversations, perfect people, perfect realizations, all in perfect timing. And that comes from being aligned, really and truly in alignment with your source, with the highest part of you. And so in order to achieve that state, you need to protect the golden goose. So that's what we really looked at last time, protecting the golden goose, which not only gives you the energy to get through all the things you need to get through, but it also ensures that you set yourself up to stay in that place of alignment, so that the work that you're doing on a physical level is extremely powerful, and the leverage of the universe can always kick in and make your small effort have huge rewards. Now, this lesson, we're going to move on more to the question of how do I get the important things done more easily and more effectively? And so we're going to talk about structures. And the thing with structures is there's a little bit of setup work involved. And so that's why I really love this quote, that if you're too busy to get organized, you'll always be too busy. You'll always be behind. You'll always be racing to catch up. There'll always be all these important things left undone. And you'll just constantly feel defeated. So making the time, setting the time aside to actually get this done will buy you back, will give you so much in terms of return of time, freedom, and energy. It is so worth the effort, because structures protect your freedom. A structure that is designed by you for you protects your time, your freedom from outside influences. So your structure can be as individual as you are. I'm going to give you some guidelines, but then it's up to you to really tailor them to work for you. But please be mindful that, I'm also going to talk about the little traps that we can easily fall into, because it feels like we're doing something effective, but we're actually not. So be mindful of when you're kind of just allowing those old gremlins to run the show, and when you're actually looking at, yep, this is actually what works for me for my own personal circumstances. Because some of you have one business, some of you have two businesses, some of you have a business and a job, some of you have children, some of you have partners, some of you have both or neither. So everybody will be different. And it's really important that your structure protects you and your freedom for your particular situation. When we have a lack of structure, it just leads to procrastination. You're not really sure what you're meant to be doing when, so you just do whatever is in front of you. And that's actually a form of procrastinating, because you're not effectively working on the most important tasks that will actually make a difference. And then that ends up leading to a sense of frustration, where you get to the end of the week or the end of the day and you think, far out, I still haven't done that really important stuff that I need to do. I haven't done that business planning. I haven't done my marketing plan for the next quarter. I'm kind of just on the treadmill. I'm just running on the treadmill, trying to keep up, seeing the clients I've got in front of me, trying to throw out a few marketing posts in between, having a few little breaks for myself. But those big, chunky, truly important things that are going to help me take my business and my life to the next level, they're just never getting done. And that's what happens when you don't have the structure. Now, very important to understand is that urgent does not equal important. And in the next lesson, we're going to get down into some nitty-gritty daily practices and habits and tasks that you can use on an ongoing and a constant basis to really weed that out, because the urgent stuff has a way of getting our attention. It's right there, it's in our face. And so we think it's important. And, somebody else's emergency does not mean that you need to put it at the top of your list. But when you're constantly in your inbox or on Facebook, or where you look at those things first thing in the morning and you do not have a structure into which they need to slot, then it can be really easy to spend your entire day being totally reactive to everybody else. And emails and these days more Facebook messages and things like that and notifications are one of the most insidious things that will do that will take your attention away from the important, throw the urgent in front of you, making it seem important, and chew up all your time. And I love a quote by Tim Ferriss. If you haven't read The 40-Hour Workweek, please do. And he's got this great quote, I'm pretty sure it's in the book, where he says, emails, brain farts. They're just somebody else blurting out a bunch of stuff onto a page, usually some random question that isn't even that important, but it actually takes you a lot of time to put together a considered response to it. And if you spend all your time just being reactive to other people's brain farts, it wears you out. And remember, we spoke about in the last lesson that you only have so much energy, only so much focusing power available in every single day. And you need to fiercely, fiercely protect that. That's you. That's your golden goose. Now, the other book you should definitely be reading again for this module is my book, Today's Woman Life Balance Secrets. And you all received a copy of it when you enrolled in this program. So take some time to read through it again. It's designed in such a way that you can just flick through it and do different sections. And there's always some practical action tips and also a little summary at the end of each chapter. So each chapter has a little life balance tip, and then it also usually has some activities that you need to do. And if you're not yet aware, then you should also have access in the member site to the author's audio guide and the workbook that go along with it. So the audio guide isn't a guide through the book, it's a guide that takes you through the workbook so that you can actually complete all the tasks in it. If you're not sure about that and you need access, just contact me. Right. So urgent does not equal important. And we will get into this in a little more detail, like I said, in the next lesson. But for now, it's an important concept for you to understand. So write yourself a big note and stick it somewhere where you see it often. So it's really important that we have some definitions and some boundaries so that we know what is work time, what is playtime, and what is downtime. You want some clear separations in time, but also in space. So your brain knows when to switch between the different modes. So when you're working, you want your brain to instantly know, right, this is work time. I'm going to go into that genius zone, into that zone of flow where I'm, tapping into the flow and I'm in my genius state and I'm really focused on the task at hand. And then you want to be able to switch out of that to the relaxed state, to recharging your batteries, and to those times where intuition and creativity can really happen for you. And it's important to help your brain distinguish and switch between these times and between these zones. Otherwise, it becomes this general mishmash where you're trying to do a bit of everything all the time, where you're spending time with your kids or your partner, but your mind is on your work, or when you're in work time, but you're thinking about the things you need to get done outside of work time. And just because we work for ourselves does not mean our work needs to take over our entire life. I know it's important to us. I know we're passionate about it, but it's actually not in your best interests to never, ever switch off from work. And in fact, it's more important when you're working for yourself to have these definitions and these clear separations in place, because you don't get to just walk out at 5 o'clock, get in your car and drive home. Most of us even work from home. So we need to have these defined separations of both time and space. You should have a workstation, a place where you work, even if you don't have an office in your home. And you should have a means of knowing when work time starts and when it ends. And we're going to do some of that in this lesson. Also, it's really important that you make appointments with yourself to ensure that that important stuff gets done, because you don't have a boss telling you what your KPIs are. You don't have deadlines on things other than the ones you set for yourself. So it's really important that you plan and make the time available for these things. And one of the best ways of doing that still allows you some flexibility, and that ensures that you regularly have time for the bigger project things, for working on your business, plus the personal things and so on, is to set yourself up with an ideal week calendar. This will be one of the tasks that you get out of this lesson, but I just want to quickly show you, this is my own personal ideal calendar back from when I was running our finance business, that's Smartline, when I was building this business, which is TWE, because it used to be called Today's Woman Events. It's now called the Effectology Method. And also I had the kids to drive around, pick up from school. I had emails to respond to. I had to do networking and so on. I needed to take care of myself. I wanted to make sure we had family time set aside that would actually happen, rather than just trying to allow it to happen in the gaps. And I was writing a book, which I needed to get done. And I did it in 6 weeks. I wrote my entire book. And yes, some of it was already blog posts that I then fleshed out, but I actually wrote the entire manuscript in 6 weeks. So you can see that every second morning basically was writing time. I would get up really early, be at my desk at 6 a.m. and I would write all the way through. I would take the kids to school, come back and write some more. And then I had defined times where I would work on the finance business and defined times where I would work on my business. And I broke that up even more into, times for doing my marketing, times for doing my networking, times for scheduling my marketing, filming my videos, and then the personal things, when would I kind of take care of the household? When was time with the kids? When was family time? When was just chill time? And also leaving some time free that wasn't really defined, and my yoga, which is very important to me. So the key with this is that it's not meant to lock you in, but you need to actually look at your week and go, right, what is it I'm needing to achieve? How much time do I need to allow for these things? What's the best way to structure that? What will work for me and serve me? And actually putting it together like this. And what I actually suggest you do is get a whiteboard or a big piece of paper or something like that, and do this with colored post-it notes and use different colors to signify different things. And, you know, again, you will have your own version. So I'm just giving you this as an example. And then the reason that post-it notes are really good is that, especially when you're first starting with this, what you then do is if something pops up, you know, I have one spot in there that's totally flexible and it'll just be whatever needs to be done. But if I needed to do, I don't know, look after one of my clients during the finance business time because I just couldn't slot them in my preferred time, what I would do is I would just swap the two around. So think about switching blocks of time rather than just going, oh, well, it had to happen at that time. And then it just takes over that spot, and whatever was meant to happen, that still needs to happen if you're going to consistently move forward, continue to grow and expand, which is what we're wanting to achieve here. Rather than just taking over what was meant to happen there, which maybe was meant to be your business planning time or something like that, swap it. Just swap it over. And that way you know that all the important things are being taken care of every week. And by doing this, you actually create consistency in your life and in how you run your business and how you grow your business. And that's what allows you to get to a point where you can consistently see clients, service clients, market to find new clients, do the business planning, and everything smooths out rather than going, oh my God, I'm so busy this week. My calendar is full. I'm slammed with clients, which is fantastic, but I haven't had time to do any promo. And so now my calendar is empty for the following weeks that are coming up. So, you know, that's a roller coaster, and I'm all about smoothing that stuff out. And this is the key to doing it. Now, also remembering, you know, we tend to think that, oh, we can just multitask and, you know, I can do my marketing and at the same time I can check my emails and I can hang out with my family while I'm, you know, checking on my Facebook notifications or whatever it is. But this is really the best quote ever on multitasking, because multitasking is truly that art of distracting yourself from two or more things you'd rather not be doing by doing them simultaneously. Multitasking is a huge waste of time and energy. It's like having too many tabs open on your computer. And I don't know if you've ever done that to the point where your computer just stops working or shuts itself down, but the same happens with your brain. You've got that limited energy, that limited focusing power, and you're spreading it between all these different things. So different parts of your brain are trying to light up at the same time. And you know, there are some sort of ancillary benefits of making you better at filtering things, but studies have shown that it takes an average of about 25 minutes, in fact 23 minutes and 15 seconds, to return to the task you were doing after you've been interrupted. And this is from a study on digital distraction at the University of California by Gloria Mark. And there's loads of studies around this. The problem is that we have this attention residue. So what happens is when you switch your attention from one task to another, and especially if you're doing it often, a little bit of your mind is still focused on the previous task. So you leave a little bit of your brain and your focusing power behind. And then every time you're switching back again, you actually have to remind yourself what it is you were doing while simultaneously still dealing with that little bit of distraction from the other task. And that leads to a cognitive overload. It's too many tabs open in your computer, your brain at the same time. And there simply isn't enough resource to go around. It means you have to employ attention, working memory, and executive function. And the harder that the tasks are, the more likely you are to exceed your limit and your performance suffers. Now, there is a really tiny part of the population that are actually good at multitasking and they don't suffer any drop in performance. It's about 2% of people. And these people actually show that they're quite good at multitasking and they can do it, but it's only 2%. And the other interesting thing is that studies have shown that the people who think they're good at multitasking, the better they believe they were at multitasking, the worse they performed on a test. And that's, you know, that sums it up. We just have no way of knowing whether or not we fit into that group. And unless you go and get tested in a lab, you're just not going to know. But just try it. Try this mini experiment for yourself. So what I want you to do and you can stop the recording whenever you need to and then come back, is get yourself a piece of paper and a timer. And once you've done that, come back and continue this recording. Okay, and what you're going to do now is you're going to, first of all, you start the timer, and as soon as you've started the timer, you're going to write the numbers 1 to 26, and then you're going to write the alphabet underneath that. So you start the timer and you write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 26, and then once you finish that, you get to 26, you start writing out the entire alphabet, A, B, C, if in case you don't know what I mean. And when you get to the end of it, you stop the timer and you note down the time. So go do that now and then come back to the recording. Excellent. So note that time. And now you're going to repeat the same experiment. You're going to start the timer, but instead of just writing all the numbers and then all the letters, what I want you to do is write a number and then a letter and a number and then a letter. So you can do that on lines underneath each other, and you're going to write 1, A, 2, B, 3, C, and time yourself for that. And then note the time of that. Away you go. All right, how did you go? Now, most of us really suck at that. And that's an example of, how much of your attention and your focus is chewed up and how much your performance suffers when you try to switch between tasks. Your brain is constantly having to switch backwards and forwards between the two functions. And that actually wastes a huge amount of time, but also energy, which means if you're multitasking all day long, if you've got your emails open and Facebook open and your Asana open and your whatever else open, and you're trying to get stuff done, but then you're constantly switching around between one or the other, you wear yourself out. You use up all your available power, your focusing power. And as you get further along the day, you just haven't got any fuel left in the tank. So you get to the end of your day and you're tired and you haven't focused on the important things and you're frustrated. Now, the reason that people still feel great multitasking is that your brain actually likes the novelty. It likes the stimulation. Every time you switch to something new, it gives you a little hit of endorphins, and that's really addictive. It's like being able to tick the stuff off your to-do list, but you haven't actually ticked it off. You've just gone, I'll just do this thing and I'll just go switch back to that thing. And this is actually really addictive. And it also feels like less of an effort because you're getting that stimulation. You're switching backwards and forwards. So it feels like less of an effort, but it is not actually effective. And this is where your limited willpower comes in again. You want to not rely on your willpower to stick to one task until it's finished, because that's what you really need to do. What you need to do is find ways of setting up a structure that makes it easy for you. And that involves setting yourself up for success by, for example, batching tasks. So doing similar tasks all in one batch and not spraying them and spreading them all out across your day or your week. Because, even little habits like opening only the browser tab you need for the current task, or if it is a task where you need to because you have to refer to different things, only opening up the tabs that you actually need, closing down your email, putting your phone away, and only working on one thing at a time from your to-do list. All these things are little structures you can set up that help you stay on task. And when you do this, you're going to get so much more done with so much less effort in so much less time that you're going to be absolutely converted. And in the next lesson, we'll get into more nitty-gritty throughout your day kind of activities. But I want you to start thinking about this stuff. And one thing we are going to start doing in this lesson is look at batching. And just before I move on to batching, I just want to make one quick comment. Listening to music while you're working is totally okay. It is not considered multitasking because it uses a totally different part of the brain, so it doesn't interfere and throw your cognitive function around all over the place. But let's talk about batching. So every time you start and end a task, there's a little bit of wind up and wind down time involved. And we talked about that with the study of the average being, 25 minutes to get back on task after an interruption. So this winding up and winding down time, it wears you out mentally and it wastes time. So you want to start looking at batching things, because often we do stuff over and over again just out of sheer habit and boredom and lack of structure, like checking your emails over and over again, like checking your Facebook notifications over and over again. But it also extends to other things. For example, if you check your letterbox, like if you have a post office box and check it regularly, do you really need to do that every single day? Because going to the post office, especially if you do need to go there, parking your car, going, checking your box, getting back in your car and driving off, it takes a lot of time. And unless you are expecting really urgent mail that has to be dealt with right then and there on that day, and waiting an extra day will cause a major problem, you don't need to do that. I check the post. Well, I've trained my husband to check it, but even he only checks it twice a week, and he expects urgent mortgage documents that people need to sign and get back for settlement. So if there is a time where he has a really tight deadline, he will go and do an extra check. But outside of that, twice a week is plenty, whereas we used to just habitually go every single day. The same goes for things like your washing. You're better off doing a day where you do 3 or 4 loads in a row, hang them all, bring them in, fold them all, than doing a little bit here and there. Same goes for your grocery shopping. Same goes for rinsing your dishes and putting them away. If you're somebody who rinses every cup the moment they use it and puts it in the dishwasher, you're actually wasting quite a lot of time. You can just do that in one quick hit at the end of the day and get rid of the whole day's cups of teas and snacks and lunch dishes all in one quick hit. And, it sounds like nitpicking, but all these things add up to a lot. And it's time that you could be using on just winding down a little bit, going, standing in the sun, doing your happy habits and spending it on that kind of time, which is also very productive and very important, or just time where you can get more done at your desk so that you can finish work an hour earlier for the day, sit and read a book, meditate, journal, do some study or whatever else it is you'd like to be doing with your time. So we're going to be talking about batching in one of the tasks for today. And the other thing to start becoming really aware of is Pareto's principle. Now, I resisted doing a Pareto's analysis on my business for so long because I thought, it's too hard to figure out and it's too much of a pain in the bum to actually analyze it all and write everything down. But there are little hacks you can do to make this easier. So, Pareto's principle says that 20% of your activities are responsible for 80% of your results. In fact, I think it's actually strictly worded as 20% of your input or your resource gives you 80% of the outcome. And you can look at things like, for example, your wardrobe and find that Pareto's principle applies. It applies in almost every area of life. If you look at your wardrobe, you'll find that you probably wear about 20%, maybe less, of the clothes that are in there at least 80% of the time. If you look at your friends, your list of friends, you'll find that you probably see 20% of those people 80% of the time. 20% of the time you tend to use about 20% of the ingredients and the foods that are available in your fridge and pantry about 80% of the time. So Pareto's principle isn't just about time and it isn't just about efficiency. It applies to pretty much every area of life. It's an incredibly interesting phenomenon. And Pareto was I can't remember what century he was around. I think it was 1700s. He was actually an economist, and he initially noticed that 20% of the people owned 80% of the land. But prior to that, what he noticed was that 20% of the plants in his garden were giving him 80% of his produce. And then he did the land thing, and then he just kept expanding to other areas and noticing that this was a phenomenon that really is in pretty much every area of life. And if you look at your business, you'll find the same, that it's about 20% of your daily activities that give you 80% of your results, of your income, of your satisfaction. So if you can narrow it down and find these things and double your attention on that 20% of your activities, what that means is you're going to improve your results by 60%. You're going to make 60% more money by doubling the time you spend on that 20% of activities that give you 80% of it right now. And if at the same time you actually reduce your non-effective or not as productive activities by the same 20%, it makes stuff all difference. So it's a very powerful principle. And, you know, if I said to you, hey, you can spend 1 week just in bits and pieces noting your activities and then sitting down at the end of the week for an hour or two and do a little analysis, and it's going to help you improve and increase your income by 60%, why wouldn't you do it? This is really, really powerful stuff, because we often think we're doing the important things and we think we're doing the things that make the biggest difference, but we're not. We're just doing what's comfortable and what we're used to and what's right in front of us. So this is you taking control and reaping the results. So let's get into it. What we're going to do is we're going to focus on 4 things. And, you know, I don't expect you to do them all in this week, but I expect you to book them into your diary, and some of them you can do straight away. Some of them you might need a little bit of extra time and planning prep for, but make a commitment to do them. Even if you think, if you feel resistance, there's probably even more reason to do it, because at the end of the day, you can go through them, design them, and try them, and then choose whether or not they work for you. But if you just resist it and don't do it, then you've not even given it a go to find out what amazing benefits are possible for you. So first of all, we're going to look at designing a structure that suits you. Then we're going to look at making appointments with yourself to make sure you do get the important stuff done. We're going to make sure that we help you minimize wind up and wind down time in all those different tasks that you need to do. And one thing I haven't really talked about, well, I hinted at it, is defining start and end points for your work time. You know how I talked about really setting up the structure and giving yourself the space and the time to define what is work time and what isn't, so your brain can switch off. So we're going to look at how you can help even more train your unconscious to switch in and out of work mode when you need to, which means that you can sit down and switch into that genius state, switch into that genius zone, get in the flow, and know that you're at work and this is your time to focus on these things. And then when you finish, having a way to trigger and anchor it into your nervous system that this is it, I'm done now, I can let it go. Just like, you know, when you used to work for a boss and you'd walk out at 5 o'clock and not care anymore, it's actually important to be able to do this with your business and give your brain time to unwind, to relax, to open up to creativity, fun, intuition, and insight. And that can only come when you're not busy slogging away. And we're also going to set you up that you're not slogging away. But when you're away from the work mode, it opens you up to all of those things. And then they help you be even more effective and efficient and do even more powerful things when you are in work mode. So very, very important. So here's how we're going to do it. We are going to do a Pareto's analysis on your business. So the way I recommend you do this, rather than just making it up, is to actually write down a list of tasks that you think are most directly related to generating revenue. So it can be stuff like sending out emails, doing promos if you're doing promos on Facebook, networking, asking for referrals, servicing your clients, asking for referrals from clients, you know, directly messaging people, all those sorts of things. And then keep adding onto the tasks of all the other things you have to do in your business, including, you know, your bookkeeping and your admin and all those little things, business planning. And once you've made that list, keep a time log for the week. And you can do this in really simple ways. There are some apps and we can share ideas in the group because there are always more coming out. So I'm not going to mention any. There are apps you can use that are really simple where you can just have it track the time for you. You can just click in and out of things, or you can just do it on a piece of paper by breaking your day up into 15-minute increments and just noting what you actually spent it down. Literally just draw a line, you know, do the 1, 2, 3, 4, cross it out for 5 thing. So you can do it any way that works for you. And when you're doing tasks that don't fit into the categories that you've already written down, You just write a new line and you create a new category because it's something you're spending your time on. And if you want to, estimate percentages beforehand of how much benefit each thing gives you, or just leave it. And then at the end of the week, look at where the money is actually coming from. So you can refer back to, how many people clicked through from your emails to purchase on an offer, how many take-ups there were from offers in Facebook groups. So some of this stuff you might need to take note of during the week as well. Direct messaging, networking. And if you don't know how to work this stuff out, that means that you do need to look at putting some systems in place where you can actually track where your income is coming from. Because if you're just flinging spaghetti on the wall and going, well, some of that's stuck and I managed to pay my bills, that's not a sustainable system. That's not going to help you just fine-tune and tweak all those little things that are making a difference. Start focusing more of your time on them and really ramping up the result you get from it. When you know your numbers, even though it can sometimes be boring putting them together, but when you know your numbers, you know what works, you know what's a waste of time, and you know what kind of needs to get done but doesn't really have the biggest benefit. And then you can choose how much of your time you spend on these things. So if you have trouble figuring out where your income is coming from and what's generating your income, you need to set up some systems. So this will be a very eye-opening exercise. And at the end of all of this, you'll know these are the things that actually make the biggest difference. This is my Pareto's analysis. This is my 20% of golden stuff. And I want to make sure, number one, I do it regularly and that I give it as much time as possible while still getting the other important things done. But I promise you, this is going to blow your mind. So make a commitment now and look at where you're going to make the time to do this and get it done, and stick really close with your buddy. Keep encouraging each other. Some people just love this and dive straight into it and they can't wait to look at the numbers, but a lot of people resist it. And you always need to know that that's a sign that it's something that's really going to benefit you. If you're resisting it, it's not going to be an ongoing thing. You're going to do this once and then maybe again in a year or two down the track when your business has shifted. But doing it once will make a huge difference to the amount of money you earn, the way you use your time, how you feel about your work, and how effective you are. The second thing you're going to do is start really minimizing the amount of time wasted in winding up and winding down between activities by putting a batching plan together. And we'll brainstorm this together on our live call, things that can be batched, things that can be done that you're spreading out all across your week or across your day that you can do in just smaller hits, bigger batches, less frequently, including things like checking emails and Facebook notifications. You do not need to check your emails 15 times a day. And, if you want a little side experiment, just keep a little sticky note and just put a line on it every time you check your emails or every time you check your Facebook notifications during the day, and you'll be quite shocked at how much that is. So we're going to make a batching plan because that will help you with the next bit, which is really starting to look at that ideal week calendar. And it's not set in stone, but it's letting you know how much time you need to allow for things, what are the important things, and then being able to swap time rather than just trying to squeeze more and more and more in. So create this ideal week calendar, not because you're going to be locked into it hardcore, but because it's going to be your guide as to what you're aiming for. And as you get started and you do have to swap times around, it'll help you kind of refine that ideal week calendar until you get to one where you go, actually, if my week can run like this, I know I feel great, I know I get loads of stuff done, and I know that, my business is growing and thriving. And so this is a little bit of a work in progress, and having that visual guide right close to where you're working is really powerful. And then the final one, which is fairly simple but extremely powerful, is to come up with some rituals, opening and closing rituals for your work time, and having, as much as possible, a hard end time to your day. And we'll talk about this a little more in the next lesson. But when you have a defined end point of this is it, and then I stop working, it actually forces your brain to be a lot more focused. It actually minimizes the amount of that switching over time between tasks. When you have a hard deadline, that wind up and wind down time actually shrinks. And we'll use that a little bit more in next lesson, because next lesson we'll talk about the Pomodoro method. But do it for your day as well, where you say, okay, I finish work at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, or when I have to pick up my kids from school, which if you look back at my previous ideal work calendar, when my kids came home from school, that was the end of my day. And the only thing I would do is do an email check at the end of the day. Just go through my emails, clear out my inbox, and set up what I needed to respond to the next day, what needed some actioning, doing quick replies, deleting a whole lot of stuff. Usually there was more deleting than anything else. And I wrote a book and I ran 2 businesses, and I picked up my kids every day from school and finished work at 3 p.m. when it was time to go get them. And this is the power of having that hard end time. And having a ritual really helps your brain to start anchoring that in, and so that way you can disconnect, know that it's now time to recharge, and then having another anchor that lets you know it's time to switch on. So when you sit down to do your day's work, and you go into that flow state, into that genius zone where you're at work and that's your focus. For me, it's really simple. I have my singing bowl and I have my chakra crystals because I like that stuff. And so at the morning of every day, I cleanse my crystals in my chakra bowl, I cleanse my chakra crystals in my singing bowl, and then I lay them out, and it's a bit of an intention setting process for me of, how I want to approach my day. I want to be grounded. I want to be connected. I want to be coming from the heart, speaking from the heart, speaking my truth, speaking in ways that empower the people I'm working with, and so on and so forth. So I like to lay out my crystals, and then I ring my singing bowl, clear the energy, get myself aligned, put it down, and that's it. I'm starting. And then at the end of the day, I collect up my crystals, I put them back in the bowl, I ring the bowl. Before I do that, I actually also disable all my notifications, which are pretty much all disabled anyway. We'll talk about this a little bit more next lesson. But I disable my Android. It's a long story. My Android app only allows me to disable notifications for 24 hours. So I do that at the end of the day, because during the day I don't really look at my phone, but in the evening, if my phone lights up, I check if it's my children, and that's the only thing I will use my phone for. So I make sure that I disable those. I close every browser window down. I do my little singing bowl ritual, and I just tell myself that's the end of my workday. I actually say day's over out loud, and it helps me switch gears. And just as a side note here, if you have a really defined workspace, that helps as well. So sit in the same place to work each day, and it actually also programs you and anchors you into being triggered to go into the right frame of mind when it's time to work. What I also like to do, it is good, your brain does like a bit of variety. If there's certain types of tasks that you can easily find yourself distracted from, I find it's things like planning a project or writing an email sequence or just stuff like that. That's more project-based work. I like to take myself to a different spot. So if I'm writing my newsletter, which I do on the weekend, I do it downstairs in the window where I can look out. And during the week, I take myself out for a little coffee date, and I do those sorts of project-based things. And that actually also helps you switch into, okay, this is not time for me to be on Facebook or in my emails or any of that. I'm just here to do this one job. So also really look at your workspace and use it to help you. Use it to help you really trigger yourself into the right frame of mind. Okay, just before we finish up, use the hashtag Pareto Rocks, or just Pareto if you forget, and share what's coming out of your Pareto's analysis. You're going to have some really big realizations and aha moments. So share them with us, because it helps reinforce it to you. It also helps everybody else kind of look at what's going on there for you. And if some people are lagging behind, you will really encourage them and motivate them to do their own. Share what things you're batching, both on a work level and on a personal level, and then bring them all to the live call, because I want us to brainstorm them and really share ideas there. Once you've done your ideal week calendar, even if it's just your first draft, share it and run everybody else through it. Give us a quick rundown of what categories you've gone for and why, and how you found it, and whether it was difficult or actually quite easy, and what kind of principles you applied putting it together. Because remember, this is your structure to suit you, and there's flexibility within the structure. That's really important. The structure is the framework, the building, and inside it, you set up some rooms where you go, right, this is my playroom, this is my work room, this is my hanging out with friends room, and you define them. And it's like building a house, right? So it's not rigid. Sharing it with everybody else helps you keep iterating through it, helps you keep refining it, and inspires everybody else with ideas as well. And then once you've worked out your workday rituals, just share them with us, because again, it's a brainstorming thing, and we'll talk about it some more on the call, and just throw around different ideas. So there are 4 things that we're working on in this module, 4 tasks that you're doing, and we're going to share about all of them, please, because the more you share, the more it helps you go through the process, the more it helps inspire everybody else. And just make a time to get together with your buddy just once initially to kind of work through those things. So pick 1 or 2 things you're going to talk about each, and just get each other's help. And then, decide whether you need a follow-up call, and book it in on the first call. So before you get off that call, book in the time for the next one if you decide you need one. And I think most of you will need one, because there's quite a bit to go through here. And this stuff is really powerful and well worth the effort. And then, I'll see you on the live call. We'll do some brainstorming around all of those, share all the resources, share all the ideas, have our usual general discussion of what's going on, bring all your manifesting questions. But I think this call in particular, I will not spend a lot of time recapping the lesson. I would like us to really have a lot of space and time to just throw ideas around, to brainstorm, to talk about it, for you to ask questions. Very, very important. And I look forward very much to seeing you then. Have a beautiful day. You've got lots to get on with. I will see you soon in the next lesson. Bye for now.